interested to know how you juggle being self-employed in a creative industry and being a parent.
With difficulty, at least at first. It was very difficult. There's a lot to be said about having a routine. My mum always said that. There's a lot to be said about having a routine. When you know if you do a 9-to-5 job, it's kind of easy to go to work and then come home and switch off. But as you know, as freelancers, when you do what you love, it can be hard to switch off. Mm-hmm. And I used to say when I speak on stage, I used to have a go-to thing at the end where I would used to say, the key to success is progression. If you're not progressing, you're not succeeding. And I don't believe that's now true. At least when you grow older, you change your priorities. And I now believe that the key to success is harmony and finding that balance between family life, especially when you become a dad and a husband. It's finding that harmony. So it's being strict with that time. When that time hits, switch off and that's it. I can come back to it tomorrow. But now's family time. Now's time to be with my wife. Now's the time to be with George, my son, and to be there. So it's been very difficult at the start, but it is a discipline and something you learn like a muscle. You just train and you do get better, but it does take time for sure.
So advice from a very creative person to parents who maybe just had kids or they've had kids for a couple of years who are maybe feeling like they've left something behind. Like, have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like you've had to sacrifice a lot for a child? And if so, how do you then recover from that? And how do you approach this new lifestyle of Tommy Reynolds, you know?
Yeah, it's something I'm still working on. George is 2 now, and there is ultimately sacrifice that has to be made for sure. Obviously, the reward of that though is you can have time with your son or your daughter. Yeah. But it was a worry that I even had before George was my world is my work, and it's what I believe it's the only thing I believe I'm good at. So when George came around, ultimately, things had to change. Things had to slow down. It's hit hard.
Right,
yeah. It's something I'm still battling, still dealing with. It's my photography and my work is my purpose. When I became a dad, I've been a photographer for over 10 years, and when you've got a newborn, you've been a dad for 5 minutes, and it's an awful feeling, but I felt like I'm more comfortable being at work at this time than being at home looking after my son because I don't know what I'm doing. And I'd feel guilty at the thought of I would rather be at work right now because it's the only thing I'm good at because I don't know what I'm doing at home. My mum has always, in my eyes, has been the perfect mum, and she's never stepped out, never done anything wrong. And it's not until having George that I'm having new conversations with my mum, and I'm learning new stuff about my mum, about her perspective. And she said something that I never thought she would say. She said, Tom, there were times where I'd give anything to have swapped with your dad, to have gone to work rather than be at home cluster feeding a newborn and not leaving a chair. That was interesting perspective. I'd never thought my mum would say that. I don't feel like I don't have a great answer for that question, in all honesty.
Well, I guess the advice you could say to people is it's a process.
Yeah.
You do learn, and I think you're a guy that likes to be good at stuff.
Yeah.
So it must be hard to find yourself in a situation you knew you'd be in, but wanting to be great at it from the very first moment. And when you find out that it's not as that you don't understand it quite yet, that must be frustrating. And also you want to get back to something that you do fully understand so that you feel more capable and you feel like you can offer something to the world.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, it's my photography, I feel, is my purpose. But being a dad at that time, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I was doing. And
that can be quite panicking and unnerving, right? Like not knowing.
So much so that I even had to have therapy because of it.
Yeah.
Because I was so convinced I'm a terrible dad. I don't know what I'm doing, because for 10 years, I'd been a freelancer at that point. For 10 years, I'd been my own boss. I knew what I was doing. I know how to get the job done.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm in a job. I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, it's major imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
When you're a dad, and it's a learning curve that everyone says it, but it's true. No one can prepare you for it. You really can't. You have to. It's only something you can experience. And for people listening, if you're a parent, you'll know exactly how what I'm talking about. It's something you have to experience for yourself to know. And it's just finding your own path, because everyone's different. Everyone does things differently. And it's just finding what works for you as a family. But it's also going from a job that's very measurable, like very focused in, if I can earn this much, or if I get this many followers, or this, not that that's the be all and end all, but that's what our industry, unfortunately, is what it is, like it or love it. And Jimmy Carr said something really profound that really stuck with me. And he said, when you become a dad, you have to transition from measurable to immeasurable ways of thinking. Because when you're a dad, it's not just, well, if I hit this many targets, if I do this, if I do that. You can't measure things like that when you're a dad. When you are creative, you can. And so I think that's been a transition for me, is realizing that when you're a dad, there is no way of measuring how good you are. I don't think. Just show up, be there, and be as present as you can. And it comes back to that harmony thing. If you can find that balance and get back to doing what you can as soon as you can, but it's a process, and it may take years to come back to that point.
I feel so grateful that you've shared that side of things, because I think that's definitely been a conversation between us for probably years about the right time, both being freelancers and in a creative industry. But to hear such an honest perspective on it, I think so many people will probably be like, thank God someone's finally saying the things I also felt, because more often than not, you do hear, like, obviously everyone who's a parent, we get like our friends who are parents moan about like the hardships of it, but that's so raw what you've just said. And I really think I feel very grateful to
Absolutely.
have, like, you've shared that with us, because
and you
I
don't
think a lot of
always
people
hear
will
from the
relate.
dads
No,
as well.
you don't.
No.
And I do think it's a really interesting perspective to maybe feel like you're secondary to the mum, which is just the natural role, I think, it just happens.
And I think because you feel secondary, you don't feel like it's your place to, or you don't want to speak out, because you think, oh, well, mum's got it worse than me, so I'm just going to say nothing. And, And then that obviously bottles up.
Yeah.
I remember reaching out to a couple of friends and said, I'm having therapy. And they said, yeah, me too. Oh. I didn't realize, and both of those friends, the first two people I said having therapy, had also been having therapy, and I didn't know it.
Needs to be spoken about more, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you for sharing that.
No, pleasure. Because it's not just, if you help yourself, then you ultimately help everyone around
Exactly.
around you.